If you watch the very first shot of The Shining, it's clouds. I should take that back. The very first shot after the opening, after the credits, you will see Stanley Kubrick in the clouds staring down at you. He has, I mean, it is amazing what's going on in this film, and no one has gotten it. There are sex scenes going on all through The Shining, all through the whole movie, and that's all I'm going to say. You have to watch it yourself, but there's all sorts of things going on all the time, all the time. Jack Nicholson is reading Playgirl at the beginning in the lounge when he's waiting for his interview. You get it for one frame and only one frame. It's well known in the 70s when the film was made and Playgirl was a big magazine that it was basically not being purchased by women. 80% of the people that purchased Playgirl were men. And and here's Jack Nicholson, who has no love for his wife at all, right. Period. And it goes on and on. It's so astonishing, the depths and the layers and the subliminal juxtaposition of images both on the set and in the camera that create the visual tapestry of an orgy. A continuous orgy. That's what's going on in The Shining.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
You know what fascinates me about Nicholson as a real life persona in The Shining, the whole backstory about him being raised by his grandmother and his mother being his sister, right? And then he finds out later on that his sister is actually his mother, and then moves to L.A. and moves in with his sister/mother. I mean, the whole backstory of Nicholson as it relates to his character in that film is also very interesting.
Oh, and also how it relates to Faye Dunaway in Chinatown, which was directed by Polanski, who is also spending an inordinate amount of his career trying to warn us about certain groups, elite groups. And you just got to figure that Polanski and Kubrick were in contact with each other, and there may have been a bigger clique here than we've been led to believe, in which Nicholson, Polanski, Kubrick, and the rest of them were all in. And I'm one of these people who thinks that Polanski was set up. I was in L.A. writing screenplays at the time when Polanski was arrested, and the girl, frankly, was she may have been 13, but she looked like she was 24, and they tried to destroy his career because he was making films that were getting very close to the truth, and continued in France to make films that were going after the truth. So Polanski has a voice in this too, as does Nicholson, and they're all kind of working together to tell you something.
Interesting. And there's that scene, of course, in Easy Rider, where it's a famous scene where Nicholson and Hopper and Fonda are sitting around the campfire, and Nicholson is talking about, aliens from Venus. And it's an incredibly memorable scene, and that it's one of the scenes from the movie that absolutely blew my mind, and it seems so out of context for his character in that film.
It did, and I firmly believe what happened here is that Kubrick had made Dr. Strangelove and had pissed off some people in the military establishment with his satire, but a lot of them had to admire his expertise. And so when he started writing 2001 in 1964, he was gupping back and forth between his apartment in New York and London, and he was hanging out in Arthur C. Clarke's apartment in London. And Arthur C. Clarke had several German scientists staying at his place as they were waiting to be brought into the Apollo program and the NASA program, waiting for their visas and things, and he was writing letters to NASA saying, this guy here is great, he's a genius, blah blah blah, and so these guys were coming in, and so Kubrick in '64 is hanging out in Arthur C. Clarke's apartment. Arthur C. Clarke, of course, is a well-known and quite open pedophile, and with these Nazi scientists, and he's young and he's impressionable and smart, and he starts asking questions and observing, and pretty soon he's all the way to the top of some kind of cult, you might say, and a Saturnian type of cult, and which is why they named the rockets Saturn V.
Saturn V, right.
And so, this is what I think. I think he got brought into a cult, and he probably experienced everything in Eyes Wide Shut, and which I believe is about him and his story. The apartment in Eyes Wide Shut, the production designer said that Kubrick gave him photographs of his apartment in New York and said, make it look just like this. Mm-hmm. So he was trying to show that this was him, and the fact that the sets in Eyes Wide Shut, the exterior sets, look like they're London made up to look like New York, is this kind of symbolic drifting back and forth between London and New York that he was going through. And he was brought into that party probably, and it probably at some point may have even been compromised. And from then on, he fell into this military-industrial propaganda phantasmagorical machine, and learned techniques and things that he was able to put into films for the rest of his career, and he did. And his films take on, from 2001 on, his films take on an absolutely otherworldly cinematography, cinematographic view that is really everyone's trying to emulate in cinema from then on.
Right.
And so, and he learned all of this in the 4 years from '64 to '68, when he went from a young impressionable filmmaker just trying to make it to a very mature man steeped in in alchemy and real history and advanced technologies that are being hidden from us. And he's trying to tell us this the whole time. He says in the Playboy interview in 1968, he's quoting the Brookings report in the interview verbatim, the famous Brookings report, which says they have to hide extraterrestrial knowledge if they find it. NASA does. He's quoting it directly. He's completely fascinated with the Brookings report. And so we can see that through that he knows the truth, and he knows that they're hiding the truth. And he was, we all wish he could have, lived a little longer so we could have seen it. What else he had to say?
So a couple of his more minor films, Barry Lyndon and Full Metal Jacket, how do they play out in terms of what you've seen in terms of Kubrick's arc, his cinematic arc, and what he was trying to tell us?
Well, Barry Lyndon is two things. One is, Kubrick in his NASA work came upon the super fast lenses and realized that he could shoot in candlelight. And being a cinematographer, he hated, as I hate, period pieces that have electric light in them. I can't stand it, and I know he couldn't stand it. And so he decided that, he was going to, since he could do what he wanted, he was going to do a period piece like no other. He originally wanted to make it Napoleon, but unfortunately Rod Steiger came out with Waterloo, which was one of the worst movies ever made, and killed Napoleon as a cinematic vehicle for 100 years. So Kubrick, switched to Barry Lyndon, and the reason he switched was for probably the very same reasons that he wanted to do Napoleon, which is he wanted to make a movie, semi-autobiographical of bloodlines, and how if you're not in the bloodlines, no matter how much you fake it, no matter how high you climb, no matter how many people you step on to get to the top, even at the very top when you're dressed up like them and you look like them and you have their name and you're in their castles, you're still never one of them. And that's the story of Barry Lyndon and the story of Stanley Kubrick. So that's really what that's about. Full Metal Jacket is really, I think, a really good film, and I think it's completely underrated because Full Metal Jacket is about the rape of the feminine and how we have created a world where we denigrate and destroy the feminine and the soft and the beautiful. And so the whole first 45 minutes of the film is taking these guys who were in their mother's arms their whole life and tearing the feminine out of them. You know, this is my dick and this is my gun. One's for killing and one's for fun, and Miss Mary Jane Rottencrotch, and the entire litany of things is about how, we must destroy the feminine within us first and then in the outside world. Kubrick, deliciously turns it all around when the big, huge, tough Marines with all the funny names like Animal Mother and all these names are shot down one by one by a vicious sniper up in the building, and they have to, many die before they finally surround the building, and Private Joker gets in. We find out it's a 14-year-old Vietnamese girl who's stomping the big, tough Marines into the ground. And even when they finally have her down on the ground, she's still the bravest person in the entire film when she begs them to kill her. Private Joker can't kill her until he's laughed at by his fellow Marines, and then he kills her. And then at the end of the movie, right after that shot, they're all marching through the burning flames of the city they've destroyed, singing, "Who's the leader of the club that's made for you and me?" And it's Mickey Mouse. And so Kubrick is trying to show us, and the whole Private Pile thing is Pile he's soft and he's flabby and he's effeminate and he's turned into a psychopath by the end of his scene, and this is what happens when men destroy the feminine both within themselves and the outside world. So I think Full Metal Jacket, and the title explains it all, is a great film, vastly underrated. So that's my opinion of those two films.
Wow. Well, I totally got the Barry Lyndon piece, but I wanted to let you, expound on that. Absolutely. I mean, here's Ryan O'Neal, who's this picaresque rogue, and even though he has all of his charm and all of this moxie, I mean, he's living a lie. And at the end of the film, he's not part of the club. I mean, it's just plain and simple. And Full Metal Jacket, I mean, both Full Metal Jacket and Eyes Wide Shut for me, and maybe you could speak to this a little bit. When Kubrick shoots a film that's supposed to be in New York, but he shoots it in London, or he shoots a film that's supposed to be in Vietnam, but he shoots it in England, there's this sense of displacement that takes place in these movies that atmospherically just does something to me. And it creates a very surreal kind of effect that I can't even really put my finger on, but it's disturbing.
It is, and you've touched on it, and you're not the first. I've heard that a lot, and I feel it too. And he's purposefully making you disoriented. Yeah. And he's in a way he's claiming bragging rights because he's saying, I can get you to believe anything. And in that you're supposed to understand what is, his real message. And his real message is, if I can get you to believe anything, they can get you to believe anything. And that's the real message of all Stanley Kubrick films. And he really does go into that, especially in Clockwork Orange, where the protagonist is literally in a theater seat with his eyes forced open to watch violence and sex on the screen while drugged. Well, right. This is what NASA did to the astronauts. It's called Clockwork Oranging them.